Hello, everyone, and welcome back for a discussion about episode 3 of Miss Austen. Where is Isabella going to live? Who's proposing in this episode? We have so much going on to talk about. I am joined by Mindy and Marigold. We are going to discuss everything that went down in this episode. So grab your cup of tea or your popcorn, whatever you want, and let's get into the discussion. Marigold's got the cute cup of tea tonight. She's going to be drinking as we're going. All right, ladies, everybody watched, right? We're all good. Everybody's finished the
We're
episode.
ready.
This is where Mindy reminds us. Spoiler alert. Mindy, give us our spoiler alert for the evening.
Spoiler alert to any of our viewers out there. If you have not watched episode 3 of Miss Austen, pause, take about 54 minutes, then come back.
That was very precise. 54 minutes. And while you're pausing, or if you're still continuing to watch, go ahead and click subscribe and the like button. We would love to have you stick around and let you know when any of our new videos drop. Also, leave us comments along the way. We love replying to your comments and seeing what your thoughts are, as well as while we're discussing what's happening. So this week, we always talk about what's happening in Jane Austen's life or her characters. We have Jane Austen's brother Charles marries Fanny Palmer in Bermuda. I thought it was interesting that we have a few names cropping up from Jane's real life that we see mirrored in her books, which I thought was quite interesting. All right, let's review what happened in episode 3. So much happened in episode 3. Marigold, do you want to give us our first bullet point here of what was happening?
In her delirious state, Cassandra asked Diana, I haven't heard it how many times, and Isabella to hide the letters.
Yeah, she was pretty frantic there, worried about those letters, and they were just like, it's fine. They're fine. They did not understand what was going on to her. All right, Mindy, what's our next bullet point that we have?
Cassandra dreams of the time she spent in Sidmouth with her family and Mr. Hobday. More specifically, she remembers the day when Mr. Hobday proposed to her.
Yes, we are going to get to some photos and that proposal lately because it is too good to not talk about. Ugh. All right. And then we have in the past, Cassandra relives the day she and Jane spent at Manydown with their friends, Catherine and Althea. And then Mindy, I'll throw it back up to you.
She recalls how shocked she was when Jane accepted the proposal from Mr. Harris Bigwither.
There was a lot going on in those scenes. All right, Marigold, our next point.
The Austens are displaced when James and Mary decide they want Mr. Austen to retire so James can take over the rectory in the parish.
Mary. There's so much to say about Mary.
I like that.
What do we got next? You can read the last two.
Jane is despondent, and then back in the present, Cassandra learns of Isabella's feelings for Mr. Litterdale.
Mr. Litterdale. All right, we're going to get into so much, but how closely did you feel it was aligned to the book? I'm going to let you guys do the talking because I still am recovering from a cold. So handing it over to you.
I think the biggest thing that we're still running into as far as the adaptation goes with the book is the mixing of the dates. You know, because they chopped off 10 full years, there's a lot that is missing and absent in between. Marigold, are you feeling that same way about it?
I do feel the same. It's one of those, you have to like double check yourself because it's like, do you remember it the same way? I always try to go back and be like, all right, I gotta check the book. Was I right or wrong about this? Because I don't remember it being like this. So I'm one of those that like, usually after I read a book, it's very hard to remember all the details. But in this, it's like, it catches you because you have to reevaluate what you read earlier because it looked different. Like it nags at you. So I was multiple times had to go check.
Absolutely. And I think this is a good case of watcher/reader beware as well, because as a reminder, it is even the movie is loosely based off the book, and the book is still a work of fiction. So this is the part that I enjoy about historical fiction is like do your own fact checking to what the author kind of put her spin on. And I think oftentimes it's where we can blur the lines and it gets a little bit tricky, and we need to remind ourselves to do our own investigating when it comes to believing everything we read. Whether I don't believe that historical fiction readers are meaning to lead us astray with the facts, they're trying to write a good story, but it is becoming increasingly important in today's world to always check your facts. So, public service reminder to do that, even in the shows that you're watching, when it's referring to people that are truly from history.
Absolutely. I sometimes have to remember that just so that I don't remember it that way either. I'm always afraid that I'll be remembering it a certain way and then wait, was that the book or was that the real life?
Absolutely. I can understand from the perspective of squeezing this adaptation into 4 episodes of why they did it. I 100% get it. But I think we all had some big issues with the scene of Jane being published and Mr. Austen um, having his health crisis that we there was a lot going on that was packed for, I think, the episode's sake, that we would encourage everybody to go look at a timeline of events and just refresh yourself on the accurate details that were going on there. The best part, what did you love? What was everybody's favorites in this one?
For me, it was it was the way that Jane was so giddy on the night when Mr. Harris Bigwither proposed to her. I don't, I know that she was drinking, right? We got that. But I just don't picture her ever being that kind of loosey goosey where I mean, she was kind of giving him the eyes, right? Like, not necessarily because she was in love with him or whatever, but you could tell that she was kind of anticipating that proposal from him. And so I thought that was a lot of fun because that's not at all the way I interpreted her as a person, but also her as a character in this book. So I think that was maybe a bit of fun they had in the adaptation.
That scene bothered me so much. It gave me an existential crisis because I found myself questioning because I could not stand it at all. Like, I was had a visceral reaction to that scene, but I was like, is it just because that's not the way that I picture Jane behaving? Because we do know from some of the few letters that we do have that she has a headache the next morning, that she was drinking. Like, that's not a surprise. So is it just I didn't expect to see her that way, or is it because I didn't feel like it truly aligned with her character? I could see her being drunk and flirty, like the version of her with Tom, but it was hard to think that it's hard to think of her as not being strategic about the moves that she was making. And that
Mhm.
felt like, why was she even entertaining him in the first place if she didn't view him to be an equal or to value her? So I felt like I was at a crossroads of how I felt about that scene. Marigold, how did you feel about that one in particular?
I had a hard time with it because I knew it. I felt like I don't know. I was going to say that dive between her and Cassie and Cassidy, Cassandra. The minute she said yes, I'm like, what? Because that's going to be so hard for Cassandra. And then the reaction is like, okay, this cannot be how. I mean, I didn't imagine it like that way. So same thing. So I was like, how can they portray it like this? Because I feel like it's such a betrayal. And then I did enjoy her realization after and how she talked it out and was like, I wouldn't heal her right. And I'm like, that's right. And I
Yeah,
just was kind
they did a good part of that, I think. Mindy, that's probably part of what you liked as well. Is like you did see the analytical side of Jane, like talking herself out of it. Like, it seems like a good idea. Now let's lay down the thought process behind it. It felt very much in this episode like the theme was that they were never both in the right moment at the right time with their love life. Like the last time we talked about like women not controlling their lives, this one felt like right time, wrong place, wrong person, right place. Like it was just like almost like they were both kind of giving up for each other and never acting for what they really wanted at a point in life with their love life. Did you guys get
Mhm.
the sense of that?
Yeah, that was actually something I was going to talk about with the next slide, the part where we talk about what surprised you, because I didn't get the sense while I was reading the book that the obligation or the duty, I feel like it's my duty to do this. I feel like those words were repeated so many times in this episode as well as the fourth episode. And I don't know. I think it's really an interesting theme to talk about someone's duty or their obligation to themselves, to each other, to their family, to society. And I just found it surprising that they leaned into it so heavily.
Mm, absolutely. We will definitely we'll talk about that more. Marigold, I don't want to leave you without saying what you loved from the episode. Was there anything in particular that stood out to you?
I just love the scenery. I loved watching like the seaside, the 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 inside of the homes, even the outside of the homes as they develop the locations as they go. It's so overwhelmingly beautiful. Everything just was, I think, really carefully done, and I love that.
I'm probably gonna get an eye roll from you guys about this because I talk about it every time we're discussing an episode. But the clothing detail and that close-up proposal with Cassie, just the sleeves, everything was perfection. I loved when I think it's the scene with the Mary that she's checking under the mattress for the letters when she's going through all the stuff, and how like just the furniture every time really gets me. Same as like the scenery, Marigold, like the mattress and the sheets, everything just felt so like on point with the historical representation. And then the proposal was just like, it was so good. It's so sad, but so good. All right, let's get to what surprised us. So, Mindy, you were surprised by your point. Marigold, did you have anything that really surprised you in this?
Trying to remember. I don't want to like go into the next one, so I don't remember if the thing that surprised me was in this one or the next one. But um, I can't remember anything else that I think for this one. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's still following along pretty closely. I think I was just surprised that Mary kind of like every twist and turn, Mary's got something negative to say, and it's like really, really wearing on you. And it makes me curious if there was like these people in Jane's life that she really kind of used as inspiration for characters later that just had these very like Mary is such a strong personality. You know, you have people that are like kind of adaptable to the circumstances they're in and like you know what you're gonna get with Mary. She's everything is gonna make her unhappy. She's gonna like demand everybody else is working, but her leg has to be put up because oh oops, couldn't help it today. I thought I'd be able to work, but I can't. It just really sucks the life out of the room with everything she does. It was hard to watch. It was hard to see Isabella in that scene where she sits down to read and then Mary is just like, no, but she says, well, what should we do instead? We should have a conversation. Well, what do we converse about? And then everyone just sits there in silence. And it was like so awkward, but I can totally picture this happening, like somebody coming for tea
Yeah.
and we don't like each other. So we're all sitting there staring.
I had such a hard time with that one because it's like she had such little happiness right now. I just wanted to be like, Mary, you can't let her just have this. Like, let her read. It really annoyed me because I'm just like, oh my goodness, just let her have this.
And she was really picking apart Jane in that scene quite a bit
Mm.
too, um, which was hard.
Yeah, I was gonna say I want to go into the next one, but especially when she said that she could be rude or
Mm.
she made a comment
Sunday
Kind.
or something.
unkind. Yes,
Mhm.
and I'm just like I can't imagine her being unkind because the whole time they showed. Of course, this is just the moving part, but they they kept showing her being like, oh, she's here, but she didn't look like she would behave like that with her. So
Right.
it had like a little bit disconnect.
What really surprised me was this scene where Cassandra's reading the letters, and it's almost like Jane giving this whole in-depth critique into Cassandra's life when she's saying like, "Oh, this and that." It felt so gossipy, and just I felt like that was the author putting that, and I can't remember if that particular bit was in the book or not, but obviously it's speculation because we don't have any letters of that sort, but I just don't get the sense that Jane was a person that would be gossiping to external sources. I feel maybe she would have written to Cassandra her very intimate thoughts to amuse her, but anybody outside of that space, I feel like she would have been really guarded about her sister. So that
Mhm.
scene really surprised me quite a bit. Did you guys feel the same?
That was the scene I was gonna say was surprised, but I couldn't remember which if it was in this one or the next one, but that one
In this one, yeah.
with me, like, I think the actress did a great job because you could see that portrayal on her face and that anguish, and I was like, "That is so not her," because they loved each other so much. I could not imagine her ever saying anything like that. I mean, of course, I wasn't there, but I just can't imagine that, something like that. I think there's a lot of liberties in some of these letters.
It made it feel almost that Cassandra was had to get rid of these letters for a sinister reason, more
Yeah.
so than a love of Jane. I feel like it tipped the balance of she was protecting herself
Yes.
rather than protecting Jane's legacy. And we had talked before about we felt that she was doing it because she loved Jane. And this, I felt like gave it a lens of she's doing it so history doesn't see her and her love lost in a bad light. Am I the only one getting that vibe from that?
I felt the same way. I thought it came off as being almost self-serving, where it's like,
Yes.
I've got to get rid of this because I don't want people to read what happened to me or my sister's interpretation of what happened to me. Honestly, but for me, even though I feel like it was self-serving, it just made me really sad for Cassandra, where it's like the, these are her thoughts through her sister's lens, and then she has to read them years later. I mean, that would be really tough.
Absolutely. It's like
Absolutely.
reliving all of the hardest parts of your life.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
With
Yeah.
someone else's commentary on top of it, though, like,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
oh,
That self-serving is such a great word choice, Mindy, because it really did feel like that. And you think of how they didn't have photographs to remember people by. So, not to say that loss was any bit easier at all. I do not want to diminish their loss, but I think sometimes when we have photographs of people, it can help us at least keep them alive. Whereas if they weren't looking at those daily reminders when she reads these letters, it like stirs everything up
mhm.
again in like the most tangible way that they had at the time. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, that would have been so difficult. Let's talk about those proposals. Okay, Mindy, you want to walk us through these?
So we have two very different proposals, even in the way they were presented, right? We did get a beautiful but short proposal from Mr. Henry Hobday right there on the beach, where he not just asks Cassandra to be his wife, but also tells her how he feels about her, which is so wonderfully done. And then, of course, in the second proposal, we have Mr. Harris Bigwither, where we don't get any of we don't get any of the proposal. We don't get any sort of connection between them. We only get the before and the after, right? And so I think that was probably done intentionally, but I would love to hear what the two of you think about those parallels.
Marigold, go ahead.
I absolutely must. I think that they were done intentionally. I believe the bigger Harris, bigger Wither, one didn't show up because it wasn't as sincere or out of love. So that's how I feel like that may have been the way it was portrayed. So it didn't seem like it was deep or true or real or love. Whereas Henry Hobday's was so much more romantic. So he wanted you to feel for her and bring you in. Where the other one was like, okay, we're not going to waste your time on this. We're just gonna go through it. So that's what I thought they were.
I feel like the Mr. Big Brother scene would have been him standing there, not able to get a word out, and Jane saying, "Did you ask me here to marry you?" And he nods, and then she's like, "I do," and then they're done. I feel like he didn't even say a word the whole entire time. It would have been the world's most awkward proposal because it took him so long at the dinner to like finally get out his sentence. The poor man, you feel for him.
Although, I want to bring up this whole sense of duty again because it was so prevalent in this episode. With the proposal from Mr. Hobday, she turns him down because of her duty or her fidelity to Tom Fowle's memory. And then she accepts Mr. Bigwither because of what she believes is her duty to Cassandra.
Yes.
So she says, if I marry him, then you can go marry your Mr. Hobday and we'll all be good to go, Um,
Yes.
so it's so interesting the way that they use this sense of this is what I owe you. So because I owe you something, I'm going to do this action.
Yeah. Yeah, that really struck to me as we've been talking about the sisterly bond throughout, that they each did opposite actions, working in what they felt was the best interest of the other person, um, and not true to themselves. And we get to the proposal. Oh my goodness, he just had the most romantic look in his eye. And it was those words. I was literally grabbing my phone. I was going to text the two of you as I was watching because I was like, this is too good for her to say no. As I think Marigold, you had messaged her, Mindy, I know you guys have watched episode 4. You're a little bit ahead of me, but just saying, it's coming and it still hurts. And I feel like that's one of the hardest things of watching this is like, we read the book for book club, so we know it's coming, but even the parts that are not fictionalized, like we know it's coming and it's still so painful to watch. And I really wanted her to change her mind and say yes through this.
I know it's kind of like you changed everything else in the book, or you changed your mind. Couldn't just change this one and give her a happy ending.
I know. It is really interesting to think about the two actresses, like playing the older version and the younger version, and how the younger version is still feels a little bit hopeful with Jane there. It like brings out a little bit of spirit, but then when we see the older version, she's almost not broken is too strong of a word, but she just seems like resigned to life a little bit. And now her drive is Isabella kind of at this point when we see her and what her actions are. I was going to ask you both, how did you feel about her honoring her promise to him? Because I was going back and forth in my head and I was like, I think it's one of those decisions that no one can decide what's right for them other than the person in the moment that's living it, because there is no right or wrong because he said you're free, she made the promise. So like, yeah, what did you think about that?
I'm one of those people who values loyalty above almost all else. But I feel like if Cassandra Austen had really loved anyone, Mr. Hobday, anybody she met along the way, post Tom Fowle, I think she would have married them for practical purposes because we know that she was a very pragmatic woman and she was always thinking about how to take care of her sister, how to take care of her mother, how to take care of Martha Lloyd, who, doesn't even pop up here, but she does live with them, we know. So even though this is so beautifully done and we want her to love Mr. Hobday, I just don't think she did, or she would have maybe made that leap.
Marigold, how did you feel about it?
I was with Jane when she was like, "Oh, come on." um, my thing was like, I would totally understand if he was like lost at sea. Then it'd be like, all right, maybe he'll be found. He could come back. But if he had passed, I have one of those like, come on, because you need to take care of your family, and also they needed it. And he was like, oh, I could take care of you. It wasn't like she had to leave. He was a caring person. I'm sure it wouldn't have been like, I'm going to take you away and you'll never see them again.
Marigold's like, babe, we need to talk. He's gone. It's time to move on.
I was with Jane. I'm like, come on, hon. Let's go.
I was trying to think of it through all angles. And even though marrying him would have helped her to bring stability to the family, I also wonder if she was thinking marriage means children, and with a whole thing of children, she can't. I mean, even though he seems like a nice guy, they don't know each other for that long. She can't guarantee that he's gonna allow Jane to stay with them once they have an expanding family. And also, when she has kids, she can't devote the same amount of time to Jane as she can now when it's the two of them that are free. So, I mean, we obviously will never know, but I wish that we could see a little glimpse into, because they truly do feel like sacrifices that they made. And why did they make the choices that they made to, because it was security. Like we've talked about before, Charlotte Lucas made a good choice. She secured her future. He seems like a decent guy. And if Jane's asking her, you're crazy, why aren't you accepting him? She obviously must have felt she had her reasons. And
I think if she hadn't cried, I would have thought, okay, it was she didn't love him or care enough. But when she was talking to Jane, she was crying, and I felt like she really did care for him. If she wasn't, then I would have been like, okay, it's just she was considering it for what's right to do. But she really looked like she did have feelings for him.
I mean, I did think Jane insulted her a little when she was like, at this point in life, you should be grateful, She was kind of like, these are not going to keep coming your way, Cassandra. Like, come on, girl.
And with the kid thing, maybe she was just tired of taking care of everyone else's kids. She didn't even want her own.
Well, you know what? I wondered about that with the other proposal as the two sisters are talking through it and Jane saying, "Oh, if I marry Mr. Bigwither, I'll have to give birth to children. I'll become the mistress of this house," and so on and so forth. But I guess again, because of what you said, Melissa, I feel like those are things she would have thought through ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if in some ways, because that's what Cassie did for all of the other siblings. She went and took care of their children. I wonder if maybe, like in her head, when she accepted the proposal, she thought this will be fine. Catherine and Alethea will stay here. Cassie will stay here. I'll take care of everybody, and they'll take care of my children, and it'll be all good.
Yeah.
But then it was the writing bit, right, where she
Yes,
kind of blanched and went, "Oh no."
absolutely. Yeah. And so many things to consider. And this episode did really jump out at me as well, that it must have, it was so different for each family. And obviously the women felt they didn't have as much security as the men felt had in their home lives. But they mentioned at the beginning, when she's like, well, it'll be fine because we've got brothers that care for us. And I thought, what a almost blessing if you had a brother that you felt like they cared. I mean, they're not gonna like give you everything, but like you could have a brother that doesn't care what happens to you. Like
Mhm.
that was another layer of probably a little bit of freedom to not marry if you like, this guy is a horrible person and I really don't want to marry him. At least I have one more security,
Mhm.
like safety net to fall back on with my brother here that will take care of me. It's so complex not being able to take care of yourself. I would not want to go back in time to that period.
Mm-mm.
All right, so we have parallels in this episode. We have rejected marriage proposals. We have
For
Mr.
both
Austen.
sisters.
Yes. Mr. Austen's dying wish and Mr. Fall's deathbed request.
Mhm.
Did you both pick up on that? Where they both look at Cassandra and say, "Take care of," blah, 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 they're leaving someone else in her capable hands.
Mm, so much weight to bear.
Well, I wanted to mention that because in that first episode, when Mr. Fowl made that deathbed request, we talked about it at the time where we were like, we don't feel like that was in the book. And so we were trying to place why it was there. I think maybe it was there for this purpose. So we could see just how dependable she is and how much trust other people put in her.
Mm,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I always wonder how that must feel when you're the sibling that they're like, you need to look out for everybody else. Like, that's a lot of weight and responsibility. And also, kind of like, it hurts my heart a little bit. Well, who's supposed to look out for her? Like, you're the one that's supposed to always, like, the oldest sister thing, that often happens is like you're the one looking out for everybody else, but who's taking care of you, sort of situation for Cassandra. Mindy, do you want to read us our next one? And then Marigold, I'll let you do last one there. We'll get to these.
The Fowls move because of Mr. Dundas, and the Austens move because of James and Mary. So it's a really similar situation there, that parallel, right, in each different dimension, that the Vickers kind of push each other out, or if you want to say it that way.
It definitely feels like that it was a world where you couldn't be kind always because you needed to make your next move to ensure your own stability.
Yeah, it was kind of painful for when James and Mary came.
Yes.
It's so painful to watch that part because again, not a big fan of the Mary character in this, so it was very difficult. But for James, I just wouldn't be like, "What are you doing? This is your family." Like, I had such a hard time with watching that part.
Absolutely. Marigold, do you want to read the last one first?
Jane, Cassandra, and Henry Hobday love triangle, mostly imagined, and Isabella, Beth, and Mr. Littledale love triangle again, mostly imagined.
Well, I threw those in there because when that was teased, the original love triangle between Jane, Cassandra, and Henry Hobday. Remember, that was Mary in episode 2 who said, "Oh, didn't the two of you have some competition over a man at the seaside?" And so there was this kind of fictitious love triangle which didn't exist.
I'm glad
And
you
then
mentioned it 'cause I was confused when I heard that in the first part. I was like, when was they are competing?" And then when they showed him, like, I still don't see it. I'm like, "Am I making this wrong?"
Well, I think it was added because here, and this, I don't remember this being in the book, so I imagine this was added as well. But Cassandra misreading everything between Isabella and Mr. Litterdale, so much so that she thought Beth was going to marry the doctor.
Yeah. I was kind of like, how'd you get that? Like, where are you coming from?
Yeah.
The look that she gave too was like so shocked. Like, that was an odd ending point for that one. But thank you for catching all those parallels for us. That was really fun to see.
Definitely.
And Mindy, I'll hand this one over to you.
So this week's log line. Through her fevered delirium, Cassandra guards Jane's letters from her sister-in-law, Mary Austen. Bum, bum, bum.
Our villain of the day. All right, and we have come to our May book club selection. We are reading Longbourn, so there is still time to jump in and read that with us. And if you head on over to Patreon and check Jane Austen Literacy Foundation, you can find the community over there. Join, and our May book club meeting will be announced very soon, as well as the next few selections. Mindy's got her nose in a book there, or Marigold with Longbourn. Makes it really hard with all three names to keep our own names straight. But this is an interesting book, and I know there's some of us like myself and I think it was Amanda that said she had read it before. It just had been a while, so a few of us in the book club, and for both of you, it is a new read. It is definitely a book that lends itself to a lot of discussion, so I'm really looking forward to reading it with everybody in the community. And join us next week. Cassandra takes the final step to protect Jane's legacy. It is going to be the wrap up. I think we're going to have a lot to discuss what's going on with the final episode and just what our thoughts were overall in general of the whole production. I really do appreciate these kind of 4 episode mini series that they do, because for people like myself that don't watch a ton of TV, it's like enough to be able to get it in, but it's enough to give a little bit more time than just a movie. Whereas it would be really hard to, I mean, obviously they do it all the time and turn books into movies, but there's so much that they have to cut out. And this at least lets the story arc breathe a little bit overall. But before we go into, oh, you both already watched the next one. I was going to say, before we go into episode 4, what are your thoughts thus far? But give us your general like did you feel like it served the book well so far for the series up to episode 3? We don't rely on your knowledge of episode 4.
I'll just say something very vague, but it doesn't make it any less true. I have really enjoyed this entire year with the 250th celebration of Jane Austen. And when you think about it, we're only 5 months in, but it is such a great time to be a Janeite because we're getting all of these wonderful adaptations and new and events galore. And I'm glad that this gets to be a part of it. So that's my
Ooh,
wrap
a
up.
little mysterious in the ending there.
Yeah.
Marigold, how are you feeling about it thus far?
I really enjoy it. I love, even though it may not always follow a book, I like to see the book and see how close my imagination is when I read a book. So to see it out, sometimes it's harder to see because it's harder to emotionally go through, but it is still beautiful and enjoyable.
Great. Well, I better get to episode 4 so I can discuss it along with everybody else. Until then, happy watching of the 4th episode of Miss Austen. If you're reading Longbourn, enjoy. We are excited to talk about that with you, and happy reading in general. Until next week, we will see you soon. Bye.
Bye.